So, how do you foresee India growing as a global player in the semiconductor ecosystem in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Right now, if you're a student and if you're spending 8 hours, 10 hours a day studying, attending lectures, but if you know that you really are passionate about some, one aspect or something that you want to invest into, then spend half hour, but spend it every day.
So, for students aspiring to enter the semiconductor and ASIC industry, what, according to you, are the core skills or the knowledge points that they should focus on early in their career?
Coming to chip designing per se, I would like to see implementation of edge AI, right? Because that's an ideal marriage of hardware and software.
After being a co-writer of various acclaimed works like Kaun Pravin Tambe and Scam 2003. So I wanted to know how was the transition from a technical person to an author. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our podcast. I am your host Adish and I'm thrilled to have you join us again for part 2 of our inspiring conversation with Mr. Kedar Patankar Sir. In our previous episode, we explored his journey, the challenges, the turning points, and the powerful lessons that shaped his career and philosophy. Today, we dive even deeper into his insights, discussing topics like innovation, mentorship, and how young minds can turn ideas into impactful realities. So, whether you're tuning in from your classroom, workspace, or just relaxing at home, get ready to learn, reflect, and get inspired once again by Kedar Sir's incredible experiences. Let's jump right into it. And as you said, that we need to be world leaders in the upcoming rising trends and technologies. So, regarding that, the semiconductor industry is evolving at a rapid pace globally, with China, Japan, and Taiwan leading the race. So, what more exciting trends do you know about, or you can share about to our viewers in the semiconductor and ASIC design industry and
Sure,
domain?
and I'm sure that there's a lot of information on Google, so I won't repeat
Yeah.
that. And I think different people have different perspectives, and given my outlook and the way I look at things, I would, for example, take AI ML for example, because that's the latest buzzword.
Yeah.
Technology that is being used, or at least claimed to be used in a lot of areas. Coming to chip designing per se, I would like to see implementation of edge AI, right? Because that's an ideal marriage of hardware and software, and I'll be very excited to see real world application. I'm sure a lot of companies, a lot of products are already out there, but I would like to see proliferation of that technology and of edge AI, because that's exciting technology to me, because the fact that you have application software layer, uh, you know firmware layer, and the train model, the inference model, and between cloud and edge. But at the same time, you have a lot of hardware centric element to it, which is actually the processor of FPGA or some kind of RTL that is implementing the ML model at the edge. So I'm excited about that, to see that. Then secondly, EDA tools are using ML technology, and I know that. And so all the industry leaders are now implementing ML technology in the EDA tool, because obviously, if you have a lot of legacy design data, you learn from it and you make the solution go much quicker in terms of turnaround time. And so I'm yet to see the benchmarking, and the benchmarking is out there, obviously, but just from my personal curiosity, I would like to see that. And then chiplets is another technology where I would actually would like to see the real world application and products using that. But generally speaking, if I look at the overall chip designing flow, I still find the flow to be siloed. And what I mean by that is that there is still this front end area and back end area. And what happens is that on the front end, we normally work with our customers very closely on understanding the functional aspects of the design. And there are function spec, architecture spec, all those documents are put together. RTL basically represents that design verification, represents functionality. But as you go through the flow, as you come to the back end, for back end engineers, it becomes uh, a design like any other design, right? So it's floor planning, routing, placement, same thing, DRC, LVS, power, this, that. And slowly you lose the functional aspects of it. So what I would like to see is more perhaps a completely differently thought out flow, or perhaps this carrying of this front end knowledge into the back end, so that back end engineers are more knowledgeable about the functionality of the design, and they can sort of make the decisions based on that. So those are some of the trends that I would like to see.
Okay, great, sir. I would like to jot it down quickly. Yeah. And sir, but as you mentioned, the electronics and AI industry is growing rapidly and it is touted to grow much more. But here the key factor is supply chain. And as we have seen that there have been a lot of supply chain disruptions due to the COVID pandemic in 2020 and a lot of international conflicts. So how would you as a CTO and investor in such companies advise on stability and growth in the electronics domain for any
Well,
company or any individual?
yeah. It's a good question, but to be frank, I think it really depends on what kind of company you are part of, right? If you are part of, so if you look at the overall, our chip design world, there are two aspects to this. One is pre-silicon, other is post-silicon, which basically means that all the work that is done before the chip tapes out, before the actual chip gets manufactured, and there is whole amount of work that is done after the chip gets into physical form. If you're working on the pre-silicon area, right, what you need is tools, right, licenses, the hardware infrastructure that is going to enable you to run those tools, and people, talent, and then
Yeah.
IP, intellectual property pieces. So that really is your supply chain. So basically, if you're in pre-silicon realm, then you have to make sure that you have a talent pool or talent supply chain, your IP supply chain, you have hardware, servers and storage. You have tools and licenses. So a lot of work, majority of the work is being done in the EDA tool world, right, and or software world. And so you have to look at, if you have right partnerships and if you have money, then you are able to buy these resources and make sure that you are able to work, and carry on your work. And obviously, companies make decisions based on physical locations, geographical areas, because ultimately cost becomes a factor. Why majority of the services industry came to India was because cost was a factor. So that's one aspect of it. Then obviously you want to tap into the talent pool also. So that's another advantage. So talking about the supply chain in pre-silicon world, that's what it is, right? You want to take care of those factors. If you're in post-silicon, where basically chip needs to be manufactured, then you are obviously dependent upon the company that is going to manufacture your chip. Early on, when I started my career, a lot of big companies used to have their own fabs, but that was not cost effective. And so companies went the uh, fabulous way. And so basically, companies like TSMC, etc., became world leader because a lot of these design services company offloaded their manufacturing work to them. So and now for most part, that model is still followed, and some obviously some world leaders like Intel, Samsung, etc., have their fast, but for the most part, many companies still give their chips for fabrication. So in that case, you are dependent upon that manufacturing chain, right? Then there's a packaging, there's a PCB manufacturing. You're testing the chip, whether it's on the ATE, whether it's on the post silicon validation. So you're doing labs, and so those partners or those capabilities. When it comes to post silicon, that's a different ballgame. So if you want to be, if you're in services company, and if you're in pre silicon, that's not your headache. But if you're a product company, and if you are developing that ultimate product where you have a chip that is getting packaged, that is getting placed in the PCB, that is going to get tested, uh, etc., then you are dependent upon it, whether you buy those expertise and have part of your company. And if you can afford that, then you are dependent upon those partners. And that's where, whether those capabilities are in your country or not, uh, makes all the difference. And specific to chip manufacturing, we are seeing all this discussion because India wants to be that global player when it comes to chip manufacturing, and I think we'll soon get there. But right now, we are dependent upon some of the East Asian countries for that supply chain. Uh, so to answer your question, basically this supply chain disruption really matters based on which area of this entire realm you are focused on.
Okay. So how do you foresee India growing as a global player in the semiconductor ecosystem in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
I think India has been predominantly, from what I see, has been more focused on services, right? So
Yeah.
basically, product companies in US or in other countries, like I said, there are two major aspects to semiconductor. One is product companies, other is services, and services companies basically build chips for other people. So India, for most part, has been more focused on services. And good thing is that while doing that, we have been able to create this whole workforce over last 20-25 years of people who know how to make chips. Now we have to get to a place where we become dominant product players. And uh, how do you do that is basically you have to have technical know-how and investment and training into more on the front end of chip designing, which is more on the architecture side, more on the intellectual property development side, more on the product spec side. So some of those decisions, some of those areas are, predominantly, I don't want to generalize, but for most part, they're still not based in India. So we need to uh, develop that talent and, put in our money, our resources to develop those areas. And this is where academia comes into play. This is where government comes into play. And government initiatives are geared towards developing IPs, developing these props ideas within India, because is what is going to make us leaders in the semiconductor space, because we don't want to keep catering to companies and industries from other countries and servicing them. We want to build chips for our own products and our own ideas. And I think for that, government, academia, and industry had to really get together. And it's not only shouldn't only happen in theory. I think at the street level, they really need to understand what academia is teaching, how our engineers are getting trained, how our industries are developing, whether the government or whether it's money from private resources. But is the money getting into creating those startups, or even within the big companies, are they investing into product development, IP development in India? And our government schemes are, like I said, they are already geared towards that. But I think we need to see results of academia, government, and companies getting together. If that happens, then we'll be able to switch from being a services oriented nation to product and solutions oriented nation.
Okay. Great, sir. That will be very insightful to the viewers and future budding entrepreneurs. So, sir, on a lighter note, I also found out, and you also mentioned that you have published various novellas in your lifetime. So, after being a co-writer of various acclaimed works like Kaun Pravin Tambe and Scam 2003. So I wanted to know how was the transition from a technical person to an author, as both of them are completely different. One is a technical background, one is a creative background. So how was that transition and how was that journey?
Well, actually, there is no transition because I'm still working in both the areas.
Yeah,
So I'm very much active in the semiconductor world, and I'm also actively writing. I think the journey started for me, like I said, in US when I started working with a friend of mine. He was also an engineer, so we started, dabbling with just creating stories and scripts and shooting short films. But it was more of a hobby at the time, and then when I realized that I'm really interested in storytelling, because probably I've been a avid book reader,
yeah,
and so stories always excited me. And so I started writing, and at that time there was no audience, right? And so it was just something that I was ticking that box, and I was like I said, writing every day, and obviously without any guarantee that anybody would like to read what I was writing. And but I just kept going because that is something that sort of triggered me, and so I kept writing, and wrote my first novella, like I said, based on something that my grandfather had told me. And then but and then I also bought books that taught me how to read, how to write screenplays and how to write stories. And so I sort of I it's like engineering. You have to do your homework, and you have to work on your skills, right? So
Yeah.
for any professional writers, the developing the skills over many many years is important, like just like an engineer. It's a job, and you have to basically get better and better at it by acquiring skills. And acquiring skills is through practice and through reading and all that, right? And so that happened. And then when we came to India, I was in contact with a known writer and director in India, in Pune. And so we slowly started exchanging ideas, and I think he somehow felt that I was a worthy co-writer, and so we started co-writing, and that's how Kaun Pravin Tambe fell in place. And then during COVID time, we got opportunity to work on a Scam 2003, the Delhi story web series, and last year we won the Filmfare Award for it, for the best screenplay. So it's been
Yeah.
a journey of 20 years, and but like I said, it's I'm still active in both the areas. So it's right brain and left brain, and or mix of it in both the areas, because you have to be creative in engineering, and then you have to be very methodical and very logical when it comes to writing. So it's not only you know you're using both sets of brain in both areas. But yeah, so I'm part of my day is spent in attending engineering meetings, and part of my day is spent in creative work. So that's been the
Okay.
it's,
Yeah,
it's been
great,
it's
sir.
been fun.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so sir, as you mentioned, you have won the Filmfare Award for Scam 2003, a Telugu story. So that's a great milestone for a person, and especially as an author. So what was the most challenging bit that you found to bring the real life to the real life, or the like a web series or a TV show?
Yeah, so it was a very intense experience for me, because, like I said, the project came to us during COVID time. Uh, and when you're writing about some real life personality, that then you have to be careful, because a lot of if you're writing a fiction, then it's basically you're creating out of thin air, right? But when you're writing on a real world personality, then it has to be research based. Our
Yeah.
research team had done an excellent research, and they had a lot of research material ready for us. But we also, as writers, had to do a lot of research. So as a part of that, our first job, before even starting to write, was first job to talk to a lot of people. And we talked to very very senior police officers, some of the gang members, cops, whistleblowers. And so we gathered our research material, also use some of the, like I said, the lot of research material that was created for us. After that, it was because it was a web series, we knew that it was a episodic, 10 episode web series. So first thing we had to do was create a story. What was the story that we are trying to write, given the research material, because same story could be written in so many different ways. So first of all, we had to pin down the story that we wanted to tell. So, what that means is that at what point do we start telling the story, and when do we finish? And so we actually, they call it the Bible, but basically we wrote almost like 100-page document just on the story part. This is the story that we want to write. And so all the
Okay.
stakeholders, writers, directors, producers, channel people, they all had to agree upon, okay, this is the story that we want to tell. Now the next thing is to divide that story across 10 episodes. And next part is screenplay. So a lot of people don't understand, the difference between story and screenplay. So basically, screenplay is something that you actually see on the screen, right? So story can be just told in two lines. For
Yeah.
example, Me and my friend, went to a hotel, and we had a nice time having some great food. But a screenplay will actually divide it down to actual shots that you are going to see, and to that level of detail of, he lifted a school, he looked at other friend, that friend looked angry, so this guy said this, so that level of detail, right? And so what exact, so essentially, and then you have to keep the essence of the story the same. You have to tell what you want to tell through the screenplay, and also at the same time keep it engaging, because then you're transitioning. At the same time, you have to also keep an eye on the character arcs. So there are multiple characters in the story, and so you have to keep eye on not only the lead character, but what each character is learning, how the character is growing, and how it's changing. So web series, and then web series format is that after each episode is something called cliffhanger, which basically means that after
Yeah.
at the end of the episode, something happens that keeps the audience wanting for more. So you want the audience to go to the next episode. So that again is a part of the science behind the art, right? So there's a lot of science behind art, like I said. So but overall, it was very intense. Almost we are writing for about almost 1.5 years, and so there's a lot of revisions of screenplay, a lot of versions book, that happen. And so but that's applicable for any kind of writing project, and a lot of behind the scenes hard work that goes on, whether it's a movie or whether it's a web series.
Okay. So, sir, as you have pursued your passion so vigorously and with so much intensity, so for engineers who also want to balance their passions and hobbies with their career and technical stuff, so what is one piece of advice that you would like to give? As personally for me as well, I have various hobbies, but as I'm an engineering student right now, I'll have to like give priority to placement and career stuff right now. But in future as well, how would you like suggest that we students should manage everything?
Yeah, and I'll go back to the boxes theory. And it doesn't really matter whether you have, whether you spend half hour doing something or whether you spend 8 hours doing something. Right now, if you're a student and if you're spending 8 hours, 10 hours a day studying, attending lectures, but if you know that you really are passionate about some, one aspect, or something that you want to invest into, then spend half hour, but spend it every day, because that will build. Because what happens is that, we wait for a leisure time, or we wait for
Yeah.
bandwidth, or we wait for that never happens. Or we wait for mood, or we wait for inspiration, never wait for those things. uh, whether you are in mood or not, whether you are inspired or not, whether you feel up to it for not, if you even if you don't feel physically, mentally up for it or not, you have to be disciplined enough to lock yourself in a place and spend 15 minutes, half an hour doing what you want to do with your life, and do it every day. It's so important to do, and that's again going back to boxes theory. You have to identify those 4 5 boxes, and you have to work in each boxes every day. Every day is important.
Okay. Yeah, sir, definitely. We'll keep that in mind. And yeah. So for for students aspiring to enter the semiconductor and ASIC industry, what according to you are the core skills or the knowledge points that they should focus on early in their career?
That's a great question. And like I said, I've been on the board of studies of an institute here, and so I interact with a lot with students. A few things you need to keep in mind. If you want to enter the semiconductor business, first thing that you need to keep in mind is that the world runs on chips. And I think often enough, even experienced people forget that. We get enamored by what we see at the surface level. If you're looking at a cell phone, or if you're looking at a laptop, you see application software and apps, and graphics and all that. But what we forget is that what is running all that is the chip behind it, or multiple chips behind it, right? So you take your smart screen, smart TV, you take a car, any gadget you take internet, you take cloud, you take IoT, you take any buzzword, AI, ML, nothing can work without chips. So that is the first perspective that I always give to the aspiring engineers, that today's buzzword is AI ML. A few years ago it was IoT. Before that it was some, cloud, this, that. Everything before that it was internet, right? So everything that we talk about in technical terms runs on chips. So without chips, nothing will learn and nothing will run. So that's number one perspective. So I think that will motivate a lot of want to be semiconductor engineers. Secondly, I think we need to remember that the world is running on a blend of hardware and software. So I always, for example, I found certain students doing their bachelor degree or master's degree in AI ML, and I would advise against it. And this is my personal opinion, and
Oh,
others may differ. But what I always feel is that your degree course should be spent in learning hardware and software both. And on the top of it, you can always acquire software skills. You can do a course in AIML. You can do some certification course, or there are so many great resources available. But spending your degree program just because it's a buzzword now doesn't make sense to me. So, and world is always going to be running on blend of hardware and software. So I think it's so important for students to learn both hardware and software. So that's number one. Number two, uh, always go for programs. If you want to be a semiconductor engineer, then always go for schools and programs that has concentration of VLSI courses, because often enough I find generic degrees like ENTC, but they teach you so many things without a proper focus on one thing, that at the end of the day, when you're walking out of the degree, yes, you know multiple things, but they don't sort of converge, or they don't add up to something more concrete. So a lot of times what we have to do from industry point of view is that for those students, we have to again train them in VLSI, and we again have to send them to training institutes or train them ourselves, and again spend 6 months, 8 months. I think the goal of academia should be to make job ready engineers on day number one. And so in even the institute that I work with, we worked on creating an honors program for VLSI, or an MTech in VLSI. So basically, it's so important that even if you are an ENTC student, for that matter, you go to an institute where you are at least has that honors program or some advanced degree where you are focused more on VLSI. Uh,
okay.
Along with that, I think technically speaking, I would, and there are so many internet resources available. So don't only depend upon what they are teaching you in the college. You can look at a chip designing flow, and you can really go deeper and learn theory of each of those domains. Along with that, I would highly advise students to learn Python, Perl, C, C++, because even if you are a chip designing engineer, you are always required to, or you should go out of your way and develop, skill sets and tools and methodology for everybody to use. So you have to invest in learning that. So that's number three or number four. Apart from that, like I said, soft skills very very important. Learn how to present, learn how to talk to people, and fifth, the most important factor I would, and that's something unfortunately that I see nowadays. Now that I'm interviewing a lot of young engineers myself, I find that there are a lot of fake resumes, a lot of fake claims being made. Don't do that. I think a person who is interviewing you will be able to tell if you are claiming something that you're not. And so don't go for that trap. Always work with a lot of work ethics, and ethics is important, integrity is important, because it's a small industry. And I often tell this to my colleagues and to young engineers that uh, people will always remember you by the experience they had with you. Even if you move on, if you leave a company, if you you somehow always end up meeting the same people, whether they become your customer, they become your colleague, they become your co-worker. But people always will remember you, and not only from your technical know-how, but also from your work ethics, from how you made them feel. So very important to work on those areas of your personality as well. So that's the general advice.
Okay. So for students, between choosing a startup and a well-established semiconductor or electronics company, which path would you recommend for freshies or fresh graduates, and why would it be so?
See, again, it's a very subjective discussion, and both have their pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Big companies come with the brand names, right? So basically, if you are going for a big company, it comes on your resume that you work for company XYZ, and that adds a value. Disadvantage of working for a big company is that you are among many others people, and so in some companies it's like a ocean of people, and so you are just sort of one of the many. And then as the big companies go through their financial ups and downs, you become victim of that, right? And or benefiter of that. So so big companies bring in brand. Big companies gives you opportunity to work on some known products and solutions, and that makes your resume look really good, and there's a lot of value to that. Big companies have financial muscle, so financially also you can be a little bit more stable. But like I said, again, the con is that you are part of thousands others, and then how do you really differentiate yourself becomes a challenge. You have to really stand apart. You have to really there's a lot of competition, right? uh, for the small company, although the brand name is not there, excitement factor is much more. uh, Building your learning new things, learning a lot of things in very short span is there. Yes, there is high risk, but there is high reward as well. So it really depends upon your appetite. What kind of companies. I would, personally, I have worked in both. So although for many years I have worked in established companies, for last many years I have worked in startups. So it really depends upon your choice. But I would advise to work in both. Whether you, uh, you know, s- uh, it really depends. You can mix it up. You can sort of go back and forth, but work in both because it just exposes you to different experiences.
Okay, so on the topic of startups, startups have taken a rise in India from the past couple of years. So, as an investor yourself, what do you consider, or what key factors do you consider before making an investment in a particular startup?
I think the most important is people. That's the most important. I know any investor for that matter will always look for people that he has faith in, and
Okay.
so that is that is the key. And so for that you have to build your record, and I think market knows you. And like I said, this world is smaller than you think. The word gets around. So if you have worked with integrity, if you are not dabbled into questionable practices, and if you are known as a person with integrity and good work ethics, and if you are and obviously, most importantly, technically you should be great. You should have exciting products and ideas, solutions. With all these factors coming together, then investor will think about investing in you, right? Uh, PowerPoint presentations don't really matter that much. Top doesn't really matter that much. Only goes so far. After that, execution will matter. So you have to show execution, and you have to sort of, as you build your own record, you have to prove to other people that you are able to execute actual projects.
Yeah.
And so it's really investing into people, right? Technologies and products come with it. So, um, and then finally, I think a lot of technically oriented people lack financial know-how, right? They may not even have basic understanding of balance sheet. So I think like I did in my case, where I sort of did this other masters in educating myself on the business side. It's very important that technical people, after gaining breadth and width of depth of technical experience, they also need to educate themselves on business side as well. So I think as investor, or as anybody would like to be part of that setup where there are he knows people, he knows their background, he knows the value that they bring into the table. They have proven execution record, and they are able to actually prove themselves through education. All those matter. All those things matter.
Okay, great answer, sir. And yeah. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our conversation with Kedar Sir. A huge thank you to him for sharing such valuable insights and experiences, each one a reminder of the importance of curiosity, persistence, and lifelong learning. To our listeners, thank you for staying with us till the end. If you haven't yet listened to part 1, be sure to check it out and stay tuned for more such episodes where we bring you real stories, practical advice, and inspiring voices from leaders and change makers. Until next time, this is Adish signing off. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep creating.